Hello and welcome back to the MyClayCo studio. My name is Carla and today we're going to be going through color recipe creation. So when I think of color recipes, I like to think of it in two separate categories, color creation and color matching. If we're thinking color creation, this is going to be a little bit more relaxed and freelance. You'll be able to just mix a few colors, and once you get to a point where you really enjoy that color, that's when you know that you've got your color recipe sorted. In terms of color matching, this is when we want to be a little bit more specific. So we're going to build on our color, trying to match something that we have. I like to have something physically on hand so I can hold my clay up to it and try and match those colors together. It's a little bit trickier than straight color creation, but I'm going to show you how to do both ways today. If you haven't seen our video on color theory, you should probably go and watch that because it'll explain primary, secondary, tertiary, warm tones, cool tones, everything that you'll probably need to be working with colors and your clay. If you've ever seen a color recipe, you would have noticed that it's got parts or numbers down the side. This is how we actually know how much of each color to put into the color recipe so that we can replicate it every time we want to use that recipe that we've created. Parts can either be created using shapes or weights. So the first one that I will be going through will be with shapes. So we have color recipe cutters, and these are block cutters. It has 8 squares in it. It means that you can cut out your rolled out clay, and then you can work out how many cubes you'll need per color for your recipe. We really like using squares over circles, which sometimes you can get the pie-shaped ones. Squares are easier to cut into quarters and eighths if you only need a small amount of a square, whereas it can be slightly more difficult to cut out from a section of a circle to get those even amounts. In terms of weights, I like to use this when I'm recreating the recipe and I need it in larger quantities. If I don't want to be cutting out multiple stamps of those parts, I can actually convert those parts into weights. That's a whole nother thing and quite confusing, so I'll go through it at the end of the video so that we have a color recipe with parts that we can actually show how to convert to weights. Parts will make complete sense once you see it, so I think we should just get into the video and we'll get color creating. Here are the items that I'm going to be using today. I've got my primary colors along with black and white on my working surface. I've got a book and pen to write everything in. I've got my color recipe block so that I can cut out equal parts. And then once our color recipe is done, I have a color swatch and my color companion. These two are just so I can keep a record of my color recipes. So we've got a clay recipe section in our color companion, and this has got all of our clay recipes that we've created. We've swatched them and baked them. So this is a great reference for us to go back to if we want to recreate any of those recipes. I've got myself set up now to start a color recipe. The word that I'm going to use today to base this off of is watermelon. So I want to try and create a recipe that just gives me watermelon vibes. I don't want to go true to color watermelon, which is quite a deeper red tone. I think I want to go a little bit more peachy pink. So I have just selected white, canary, and cadmium red. I don't think I'm going to need any kind of blue or black in this, but I do have them off to the side just in case I need them. I've written down my colors on the side so that I can make note anytime I add a part. And I've got my clay pieces cut up into blocks so that I can chop up parts evenly and start mixing. I'm going to be starting out pretty simply to begin with, so I'm just going to add 2 parts red and 2 parts white because I know that will give me a pink tone. So once I have these, I just make a note. I just do it in little strokes to show I've got 2 parts and 2 parts so far. Mixing equal parts like this is known as a 1-to-1 ratio. You can utilize this in lots of really simple clay recipes where you'll take an existing color and add, say, white to it. And that 1-to-1, you're just making sure the parts are even and you'll get a lot of beautiful color recipes from that. This 1-to-1 ratio, which I've got 2 parts and 2 parts, has actually turned out kind of almost like a true to color watermelon. I want it to be a little bit lighter, possibly might need to add some yellow, but I'll have to see once I've added some more white into that. So I'm going to add just one square at a time now, just making sure that I'm not diluting that color too much. So I've got my one square of white. I mark that I've put another square of white in, and I mix them. So I actually really like the watermelon color that I got just from mixing those two colors together. I do want to see what it would look like if it was a little bit peachy. So I'm actually going to start another color recipe here just to see what it would be like if I added the same 3 white, 2 red, but then adding half a yellow, just to see what that would come out with. It might be a little bit too peachy, or it could be perfect. We'll just see what we get. Okay, I've mixed that one up, and you can see them side by side. They're pretty similar, but there is a little bit more of a peachy tone to this one, and I think I actually prefer that. It reminds me a little bit more of like summer than this straight pink tone. So I'm going to actually record this one as my watermelon recipe. So now that I have my color recipe that I'm happy with, I just want to recreate a little bit more just so that I have enough to swatch out of this color. So I've just got an extra little cube. So I've got 3 parts, half, and 2 parts. I'll mix these ones up. This is also just testing that my recipe will garner the same results as this one. Once I've mixed them, and then I'll put them together and stamp them out. I have my recipe here. I'm just going to take my color swatch cutter and stamp that one out. This color swatch is now ready for baking. Now that we've got our color recipe sorted, I'm just going to transpose it into the recipe part of my book. You can see I've got color recipes, it goes under red, and I'll just pop it in here. Now that I've got my color recipe in here and I've named it watermelon, I can now get my color swatch and just tag it watermelon. So when I'm looking it up for the recipe, I have my reference word. Okay, so we have our baked piece out of the oven now. It looks like a beautiful watermelon color. So I'm just going to take my color companion and go to clay recipes. This is a red tone, so I'm just going to pop it up the top here. I've already written watermelon on the back, which you can see here. I've now got my color swatch, which is referenced. So now all I have to do is look up watermelon when I go to my reds in my book, and I've got a fully referenced color recipe. All right, let's get into color matching. So color matching today, I'm going to be using this washi tape because I want to use it in my creation. So I'm going to try and color match this beautiful, kind of like a duck egg blue color. So I know that I've got quite a pale blue that has green undertones. So I've already got my white, blue, and yellow. I've put a little bit of black here because I don't know, I might need to dull the color depending on how bright my blue and yellow make this kind of duck egg color. So we'll just see how we go. I'm going to slice a little bit of this off just so I have a reference piece, because I'm going to be using it with my clay. So I want to be able to just stick this on my clay every now and then just to see how close I'm getting to that color. Alrighty, and let's get into it. So to start off with, I know that I want it quite a pale color, so I'm actually going to start with 6 parts white, and I might just do 1 part blue and see how we go. Generally, when I'm making color recipes, which you would have seen in the previous one as well, I tend to start with whatever the base color is. So watermelon is quite a red pink color, so I use my white and red. This I know is a blue color with slight green undertones, so I'm using white and blue. I'm going to mix a kind of pale blue colour first, and then from there, once I'm happy with the tone and colour of that pale blue, I'm then going to just modify it slightly by adding a green tinge with my yellow, and then I'll just see if I have to dull or lighten it with any more white, or dull it with that black. Okay, so you can see here it's quite a pale blue. It needs to be much lighter to be this, so I'm going to put in another square of white. And I'm going to preemptively chop this in half because I'm probably going to go up in half increments if I need to add any more white to this. Okay, so I'm just going to check it. It's probably the right lightness. I might need to add a little bit more after I've added in some of my other elements. I want to try and get that green tone now. So I'm going to start this off. I always like to start off recipes that I'm color matching with really small increments because it's very easy to add color in. It's not so easy to take it out once you've got it in there. So I'm going to start with a quarter. All the while as well, you want to make sure that you're recording down what you're adding in your colors. I've got this in, so I'm just going to mix the yellow. Definitely need more yellow, so I'm going to take another quarter and just record that. Okay, so we're starting to get a little bit closer to that color. It's still not quite there. I might be all right with the yellow tones, although it does look like I still might need to add just a little bit more yellow to that because it's still looking a little bit too pale blue rather than that really nice yellow tone. I think I'm actually going to cut this in half again, and I'm just going to add in, so this is not a quarter, it is an eighth, so I'll just record that I've only added an eighth in. I may need to add this whole quarter, but I'm just going to have a look. And the good thing is if it's starting to look a little bit too green, I can then just add in a little bit more blue to that. Okay, I'm just going to color check this one. So I'm getting pretty close to that. It's a bit hard to see in the light. It is much more vibrant though than what this one is. So I think I'm going to have to add some black in just to dull that color a little bit. Again, I think I'm going to err on the side of caution. And I'm just going to add an eighth in. I'm going to see how I go. So I chop this. See, and this is what I mean by it's much easier using a square than a pie, like using a circle shape. All right, so I'm just going to record that. I've put an eighth black in. I don't use black often, but I do find that if I need to dull the color slightly and I don't want the actual undertones to change, like changing it more purple or green or orange, all I have to do is add a little black in and it will dull those colors. I'm just going to do one more eighth. So that brings us up to a total of a quarter of that black in there. I just think I need to bring down some of the tone in that. All right, let's see where we're at now. I'm going to check my color. And yeah, that's looking much better. I think I did just need that little last eighth of the black just to make it perfect. The good thing about starting out with all of your squares cut out is if at any point you accidentally forget to write something down, you can always reset your pieces that you've got left. So now even if I hadn't written it down, I know that I had 8 white up here and then I had 4 of each of these. So I could backtrack and say, okay, I've used 7 white, 1 blue, a quarter black, and this one is a little bit more difficult because it is a half and an eighth, 5/8. But at least now, if I ever forget to write it down, I can always reset and I'll know exactly what my color recipe is. A good thing to do is once you've done your color recipe is what you have written down, just make it again using the parts that you've written down and make sure that it is the same tone so that you're knowing that you can replicate that recipe again. I'm back. I've remixed my color recipe from the original and they're the same, so I know that my color recipe works now. I'm just going to combine these ones, swatch it, bake it, and then record it in my book. Okay, as promised at the start of the video, I said I would show you how to recreate a recipe that you already have on hand or if you find it online, and how to change the parts into weights. So one of the most important things when doing this is to make sure you've got something like a set of jewellery scales where it's going to go down to 0.01 of a gram, just so that you know you're getting accurate measurements. So I'm just going to turn my scales on. I've got a little silicone bowl that I'm going to use. So if I'm making watermelon and I want to make a larger amount of this, so I could do 3 grams, 2 grams, and half a gram. And then I can just add on to it from there by doubling, tripling, quadrupling the recipe. So let's say I want to make twice this recipe. So I might do 6 grams of white. So let's see what this ball is. With the white, yep, that's about 6 grams. So then our red would have to be double that, so 4 grams. Cool, we got 4 grams. And last we've got Canary. So this is half a gram, so if we're doubling it, it's 1 gram. Okay, so I've got the gram measurements. All I have to do is mix those together and it should come out as the same as our watermelon colour. And you can see here now after mixing, I've got my watermelon colour, which is exactly the same as my clay recipe. I've just done it with weights. Now where it can get tricky is when we're doing our colour matching recipes, like our duck egg blue that we did, where some of the equations are a little bit complex. So this one has 5/8 in it. For me to work out this in weights, I would convert it to decimal points first. So we're going to do a little bit of maths here. You can skip if maths is not your jam and you don't want to do this. Stick around though if you want to work it out with me. So 5/8, so if I take one of the 8s off, it's 4/8, which is, we know, half. So we've got 0.5, and we know that 1/8 is 0.125. So that would mean that 5/8 is 0.625. So 1/4 is very simple, 0.25, because that's a quarter of a whole. So these are your fractions as decimal points. So from here, it's very easy. Again, 7 grams, 1 gram, 0.625 of a gram, and 0.25 of a gram. And then from here, you can also work on scaling it like we did in that last one. So if you want a large quantity of this, you can times it by 10. So it would be 70, 10, 6.25, 2.5. I hope that makes sense. Please drop a comment down below if you have any questions or if your math just isn't mathing. I'll be happy to help with any problems that you might have. But that's our colour recipes for today. We hope you've enjoyed this colour recipe video today and that we have helped you in your colour creating journey. If you did have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more polymer clay tips and tricks, and we'll see you next time.